They dragged Seraphina by the elbows hard enough to bruise, her boots skidding over moonstone as blood dried in stiff flakes across the front of her healer's robe. The moon court glittered like a knife. Silver chandeliers burned cold over polished black marble, over carved pillars wrapped in wolf vine, over nobles in winter silk who leaned to whisper as she was hauled down the center aisle in irons. She could smell all of it at once: wax smoke, expensive amber oil, old fur cloaks, fear sweat hidden under perfume, and blood. Always blood. Not the Luna's blood. Not that sharp metallic panic from the birthing chamber. This was hers, from where the guard's gauntlet had split her lip when she demanded they let her wash before trial. "Seraphina Windrider," the High Steward called, voice ringing. "Formerly court healer of the Eastern Den, you are accused of administering a uterine purge under guise of restorative tonic, causing the death of Alpha Issue." A hiss ran through the gallery. Baby killer. She lifted her chin anyway, though her wrists burned where silver cuffs bit skin. "I administered no purge. I prepared no tonic for the Luna today. Scent trial me. Now." Luna Isolde sat veiled beside the throne, pale as ash, fingers clenched around a black handkerchief. She did not look at Seraphina. She did not look at anyone. On the high dais, Alpha King Roderick drummed his fingers once on the arm of his throne. He looked exhausted, not grieving, jaw dark with beard shadow, gold circlet crooked as if he'd put it on in anger. Border maps lay open at his side, weighed down by a dagger. He stared at Seraphina for only a heartbeat before turning to the council benches. "Nightshade envoys are at our northern gate," he said. "Their warbands are gathering. We settle this today." Seraphina's pulse slammed. "Then settle truth, Your Majesty. You know my formulas. You know I don't touch Moonbane, not ever, not near a pregnancy." "Enough." His voice cracked like a whip. From the gallery, Valentina Silvermane folded her gloved hands and smiled. Small, serene, victorious. Her hair was braided with pearl wire, her throat marked with no mate bite, no claim. Her scent floated down in delicate layers: rosewater, clove, and beneath it the acrid bite of anticipation. Seraphina met her gaze and understood, too late, what had been moving under the court's surface for weeks. The sweet invitations to dine, the sudden questions about tincture storage, the servant reassigned from Seraphina's lab to Valentina's floor, a trap set with lace and courtesy. "Call my apprentice," Seraphina said fast. "Call Tamsin. She logged every bottle. Check the seal wax. Mooncourt law grants." "Mooncourt law?" Counselor Hest cut in. "Also grants the Alpha authority to satisfy blood debt in time of war." A murmur of agreement. Cowards finding shelter in procedure. Roderick stood. His wolf flashed at his eyes, bright, predatory amber, and the room stilled under command. "We cannot afford civil fracture and border assault simultaneously," he said. "Nightshade demands reparative concession for the skirmish at Hollow Pass, and proof our court can discipline its own. We will give both." "No." Her wolf snarled inside her bones. The steward unrolled a parchment sealed in black wax. "By treaty of provisional peace, one accused of grievous court harm may be transferred as medical reparations to Nightshade custody, to serve displaced populations under supervision." Seraphina laughed once, disbelieving, breathless. "Medical reparations?" She looked at Roderick. "I saved your soldiers at Frost Ford. I set your sister's spine with my bare hands while she screamed. I pulled your nephew from fever. You would hand me over like traded grain?" His expression didn't move. That was the worst of it. Not rage, not even shame, just calculation. "This is the least bloody outcome," he said. Valentina's smile widened by a fraction. A guard stepped behind Seraphina and tore the healer's insignia from her sleeve, ripping cloth and skin together. Another unclasped her rank chain and let it clatter on stone. The sound rang through the court like a bell struck for the dead. "She is stripped of station," the steward said. "Asset transfer authorized." Asset. Serafina lunged, not at Roderick, at the parchment. Silver burned as her cuffs yanked tight. Pain shot up her forearms, white and vicious. The guard slammed her to her knees. "Please." She hated the word the moment it left her mouth. At least grant sent proof before sentence. One breath. One inquest. Roderick took the quill, signed his name in a single hard stroke, and pressed the king's seal into hot wax. "Remove her." The gallery bloomed with whispers as they dragged her backward down the aisle, her blood and the luna's dried stains marring polished marble. Baby killer. Poison bitch. Should have been hanged. Valentina descended one step from the gallery rail as Serafina passed. She pitched her voice so only Serafina could hear. "You always did confuse usefulness with importance," she murmured. "Try not to spill anything on your new masters." Then the doors opened to winter, and Serafina was marched out of the only home she had left. By nightfall, the palace lights were gone behind them, swallowed by pines and snow. Serafina rode in an iron-barred transfer wagon with 2 guards at the rear bench and 2 on horseback flanking. Silver chain ran from her cuffs through a ring-bolted floor plate. Every jolt made the metal bite deeper. She counted breaths to stay sane. 4 in, 6 out. Catalog pain-like symptoms: split lip, wrist laceration, possible rib bruise left side, mild hypothermia setting in. The captain rode close enough for her to hear him mutter with the others. "Hand over at first light. Nightshade signs receipt. We ride home." "Think they'll dissect her?" one guard asked. "Who cares, long as they take her." A mile later they stopped at a way station ruin. Roof half collapsed, hearth cold, walls chalked with old pack marks. The guards drank spiced spirits and played dice by lantern light. Serafina sat chained in shadow and pretended to shiver harder than she was, head bowed, listening. A hoofbeat approached. Messenger. "From Lady Silvermane," the rider said, breath fogging. Paper rustled. The captain cracked seal wax and read in silence. His scent changed. Stale nerves, reluctant obedience. "What?" one guard asked. The captain folded the letter. "Nothing. Final instruction." He looked at Serafina then, and his gaze dropped to her mouth. Ice went through her blood. "When they thought she slept," he said quietly. "At border marker, gag her before exchange. If she resists, cut the tongue. She can heal with hands." Serafina kept her breathing slow, steady, dead. Inside, something snapped clean in 2. If she stayed chained, Valentina would erase her voice before Nightshade ever heard her. No scent trial, no testimony. Just a mute criminal handed over to vanish in treaty ink. When the dice game grew loud and the second flask emptied, she shifted, letting one knee scrape near her boot seam. She'd hidden a sliver of bone needle there weeks ago after a field surgery, forgotten until now. A healer's habit. Never travel without a tool. The chain ring squealed as she rolled to block it with her body. Her fingers were numb, slick, clumsy, but silver cuffs still had locks, and locks still had mouths. She fed the needle in, felt for the spring tongue, breathed through the burn as silver scorched her skin. Outside, a guard barked laughter. Another went to piss behind the wall. Click. One cuff loosened. She swallowed a cry, kept her wrist inside the open loop so the chain still looked taut in lantern shadow. Waited. Counted 20 breaths. The captain rose, stumbled to the door, went outside to vomit spirits into snow. Serafina moved. She slipped free, threaded the dangling cuff back onto the chain so it would hold weight for a glance, then slid through a gap where rotten planks had split near the wagon floor. Splinters tore her palms. Cold punched her like a fist. She ran. Snow crust shattered under each step. Pines crowded black and silent. Her lungs burned raw. Silver on her remaining cuff slapped her wrist and left a streak of fire with every stride. Behind her, a shout split the night. "She's loose!" Hounds bayed. She cut downhill toward the river gorge, where moonlight turned ice to broken glass. Branches whipped her face. She nearly went down twice, caught herself on roots, kept moving. If she could cross the old border trench before dawn, Nightshade scouts might find her first. Might kill her. Might not. Better than losing her tongue in a ditch. A horn sounded behind. One long note, then two short. Tracking formation. She slid down an embankment into waist-high dead reeds and icy mud, crawled through, teeth knocking. The world narrowed to breath and pain and the iron taste of fear. Her wolf pushed at her skin, frantic, but Silver suppressed full shift. She could only half phase her senses, enough to smell pursuit getting closer. Torch smoke. Wet dog. Men. She reached the stone marker that once divided Mooncourt lands from Nightshade territory, a toppled pillar carved with two moons and a claw slashed through both. One more ridge beyond it, then the ruined keep. An arrow hissed past her ear and thunked into a tree. "Stop!" the captain roared. "By order of the crown!" Seraphina laughed, wild and ragged, and scrambled up the ridge. At the top, her legs failed. She dropped to one knee in snow and looked down into the valley beyond. The border keep rose from frost like a broken jaw, towers split and roofless, nightshade banners patched from black and indigo snapping in wind. Fires burned in braziers along the inner wall. Wolves moved below, lean, scarred, efficient. Refugees and fighters together. Moonriders burst onto the ridge behind her and seized her arms before she could slide down the far side. The captain backhanded her across the mouth for the trouble, then yanked her upright. "Thought you'd run to monsters," he hissed at her ear. "Good. Saves us miles." They dragged her down the slope at spear point as dawn bled gray across the snow. The keep gate stood open, iron teeth bent from old siege. Nightshade guards fanned out, bows half drawn, eyes bright with distrust. Their armor didn't match. Their hunger did. These were wolves, rebuilt from ruin, not polished court soldiers. They watched the moon delegation like they were measuring throats. A broad-shouldered Nightshade lieutenant stepped forward, scar from temple to jaw. "State business?" The moon captain shoved Seraphina to her knees in the slush and held up the sealed treaty tube. "Transfer under provisional peace. One medical asset condemned by Mooncourt delivered for Nightshade service." Asset again. She tasted blood and wanted to bite someone. The lieutenant's lip curled. "We don't take slaves." "Then take reparations," the captain snapped, "signed by your acting alpha at Hollow Pass." Murmurs rippled along the wall walk. Seraphina kept her eyes down, not from submission, from dizziness. Fever crept under her skin, old interrogation bruises waking with cold. She swayed. Bootsteps approached from the inner yard, not hurried, certain. The Nightshade wolves parted as a man came through the gate court, tall enough to eclipse the brazier light for a heartbeat. Dark hair tied back at the nape, coat of black leather worn thin at the cuffs. Scar crossing one brow into his hairline, no crown, no ornament, just command worn like a second skin. Theron Nightshade, if rumor held true. Exiled heir, border wolf, enemy. He stopped 3 paces from her. The lieutenant handed him the treaty tube. He did not open it. "Lift her head," he said. The moon captain grabbed Seraphina's jaw and forced her face up. The world split open. Her wolf slammed forward so hard her vision flashed white. Scent hit first. Cedar smoke after rain, cold stone, winter air just before snowfall. It poured through her like wildfire through dry brush, igniting every nerve. Home. Mine. Impossible. The man in front of her went utterly still. Theron's pupils blew wide. His hand tightened on the parchment until wax cracked beneath his fingers. She saw the moment he felt it too. The violent intake of breath. The tremor he tried and failed to hide. The raw, stunned fury rising behind his eyes. Seraphina's knees weakened under the bond's pull. Panic surged faster. Enemy. Border Alpha. The wolf in her chest howled yes anyway. No, she whispered, the word breaking as if it hurt. Theron looked from her shackles to the moon seal and bared his teeth. Not at her. Who, he said, voice hoarse with rage, dares barter my mate? The word cracked across the courtyard like a strike of iron. Mate. Every wolf on both sides of the gate went still. The moon captain recovered first, laugh thin with nerves. Your mate, he said, jerking Seraphina's chain hard enough to make her choke. This is a condemned court criminal. Theron did not look at him. He looked only at Seraphina, and she could not breathe. The bond was not soft recognition. It was violence, heat lancing through her sternum, static skating over skin, a magnetic pull in her bones so intense it bordered on pain. Her wolf surged up, clawing against silver suppression, whining and snarling in the same heartbeat. Run to him, bite him, trust him, fear him. Home, home, home. No. She dragged in air through blood and snow and cedar rain scent that was now everywhere, inside her mouth, her lungs, her pulse. Theron's eyes flashed gold, predator bright, undeniable. His hand shook once at his side, as if every instinct in him wanted to lunge forward and tear every moonwolf apart. The vein stood out at his throat. He swallowed it down. That restraint was somehow more frightening than if he'd roared. Seraphina forced words past numb lips. Don't call me that. His gaze sharpened, not wounded. Understanding. What should I call you? She hated that her body answered before her pride could. Her wolf pressed toward him with dizzy devotion. Her mind reeled with treachery. Seraphina, she said. Healer, not yours. Something like grim approval flickered across his face. Seraphina, then. The moon captain yanked her chain again, possessive in panic. Transfer terms don't include theatrics, Nightshade. Sign receipt, and this filth is your burden. Theron finally turned his head. The temperature in the courtyard seemed to drop. Remove your hand, he said. The captain bristled. I am still acting under moon. Theron moved so fast Seraphina barely tracked it. One moment he stood 3 paces away. The next, his hand wrapped the captain's wrist, twisting with clinical precision until bone popped. The man screamed and dropped the chain. Nightshade guards bared teeth. Moon soldiers raised spears, a dozen wolves on the edge of shifting. Theron held the captain suspended in that lock and spoke to both sides without raising his voice. Any weapon lifted in my yard is a declaration. Choose very carefully. No one moved. He released the captain with a shove that sent him skidding through slush. Then he crouched in front of Seraphina, bringing himself lower than her eyeline. Not dominance, not threat. May I? He asked, fingers hovering near her cuffs. No one had asked her permission in days. Her throat worked. They're silver. I can smell it. His jaw flexed. It's burning you. She gave one jerky nod. His fingertips touched the lock, careful not to brush her skin. Even through fever haze she watched him working the mechanism, steady, deft, no fumbling urgency despite the wild scent of rage coming off him. Click. The first cuff dropped. He stripped his glove, wrapped it around the hot metal and set it aside like it was poison. When he reached for the second, she flinched anyway. He stopped instantly, hand retreating. Do you want me to continue? The courtyard blurred. Her wolf screamed yes. Her scars screamed no. She closed her eyes, breathed once, opened them again. Yes. The second cuff fell open. Pain flared where silver had branded her wrists. Then sensation rushed back in needles. She swayed. Theron rose with her movement but did not touch. The Moon Captain cradled his wrist, face white with fury. By treaty, she remains accountable to Mooncourt. She can be inspected, audited, returned at council request. Theron took the black sealed tube from his lieutenant at last, snapped it open, scanned the page in silence. Seraphina watched his expression darken line by line. Then he rolled the parchment and handed it back to the captain. "You'll tell King Roderick this," he said. "Any wolf who sets chain on Seraphina Windrider in my territory forfeits the hand that did it." The captain spat blood into snow. "You'd break peace over a female?" Theron's smile was all teeth. "I'd break kingdoms over my mate. Peace is me being merciful." A low, savage sound of agreement rose from the nightshade wall. Seraphina's knees buckled then, body cashing every debt at once. Cold, blood loss, silver burn, sleeplessness, terror. The world tilted. Theron caught himself before touching her, fists clenched at his sides. "Seraphina." She tried to straighten and failed. "May I carry you?" The question split her open almost as much as the bond did. No one asked. No one asked. She nodded once because standing was no longer an option. He slid one arm beneath her knees, one behind her shoulders, lifting as if she weighed nothing. His chest was furnace warm through worn leather. Cedar and rain closed around her like a storm shelter. Her wolf sighed in pure relief, traitorous and complete. She kept her head turned away from his throat anyway, jaw locked against the urge to nuzzle into his scent. As he walked through the keep, nightshade wolves stepped aside in silence. Some stared at her with suspicion, some curiosity, one or two with open hostility. She expected triumph in him, possession, some smug claim over fate's cruel joke. Instead, his heartbeat hammered against her ear like controlled panic. He was as wrecked by this as she was. He took her not to a cell but to a narrow stone chamber at the inner keep, once an infirmary by the look of the shelves carved into the wall and the copper wash basin by the hearth. Fresh blankets, a brazier already lit. Someone had moved quickly. Theron set her carefully on the pallet and stepped back at once, giving space. "You're safe here," he said. She barked a laugh that turned into a cough. "I was safe in a royal court this morning." His expression tightened, anger aimed elsewhere. "Fair. Then," he corrected himself, "no one in Nightshade will touch you without your consent. Including me." She looked up sharply. He held her gaze. "Especially me." A knock sounded. The scarred lieutenant from the gate entered with a bundle, stopped dead when he saw her unshackled, and masked whatever he felt behind military blankness. "Alpha, perimeter reports." Theron didn't look away from Seraphina. "Later." The lieutenant hesitated. "Moon delegation requests signature and immediate departure." "Let them freeze." "Yes, Alpha." He tossed the bundle onto a stool, clean shirt, wool trousers, salve tin, and added rougher. "If she poisons anyone, it's on your head." Theron turned. The room pressure changed. "Name?" The lieutenant blinked. "Rurik." "Rurik," Theron said softly. "You will not speak about my healer that way again." Rurik's nostrils flared. "Your healer? She's the miscarriage witch, The table beside him exploded under Theron's fist. Oak split down the middle with a crack like thunder. Splinters sprayed across the floor. Rurik jumped back, eyes wide, wolf flashing up in reflex. Theron's voice went cold alpha law. "Any wolf who threatens her answers me in blood challenge. Test that if you like." Silence. Rurik dropped his gaze first. "No challenge." "Then get out." The lieutenant left with his shoulders rigid, shutting the door hard behind him. Seraphina stared at the ruined table, pulse racing for a different reason now. Not fear, not quite. Theron exhaled slowly, looked at his bleeding knuckles as if surprised by them, and wiped them on his trouser seam. I should have done that at the gate, not here. You didn't need the noise. You didn't have to do it at all, she said. Yes, he said. I did. He crossed to the door, set something on the floor by the threshold, then sat down outside in the corridor where she could see him through the crack, before he pulled it nearly closed. Metal clicked. She lurched upright, panic spiking. Locked in? Then she saw it. A key. Slid deliberately just inside her reach. His voice came through the wood. That opens the outer bolt. If you want to leave, leave. No one will stop you tonight. Her fingers closed around the key. Real. Heavy. Possible. Why? She whispered. A pause. Because fate already took your choices today. I won't. She sat there with the key in her palm long after his breathing settled into a wakeful rhythm beyond the door. She didn't run. By midnight the fever found her. It began as chills so sharp her teeth hurt, then heat flooding too fast. Skin slick and burning. Old bruises from moon interrogation blooming purple-black beneath the surface. She curled on the pallet, trying not to make noise. A healer's inventory ran automatically even through pain. Infection likely from split skin under silver burns. Dehydration. Adrenal crash. Possible cracked rib now inflamed. She must have whimpered anyway, because the door opened and Theron was kneeling just inside. Hands visible. Empty. Seraphina. His voice stayed low. Can I approach? She nodded, shaking. He came to the pallet and stopped at arm's length. Tell me what you need. Not what's wrong. Not hold still. Need. Willow bark, she managed. Ground fine, not boiled whole, it'll spike my stomach. Yarrow if you have it. Salt water. Clean cloth. He was already moving. Stay awake. Don't command me. A ghost of a grin crossed his mouth despite the tension. Request then. Stay awake. He returned with a mortar, pestle, bundled herbs, steaming water, and 3 cloths. He had no idea how to hold half of it and looked offended by that fact. Show me. She did, voice ragged, guiding his hands. Not that stalk, leaves only. Crush clockwise. Gentler. You're bruising oil out too fast. Yes. Add 2 pinches salt to the cup. No more. His big fingers were clumsy for exactly 3 breaths, then adapted with startling precision. He watched her mouth when she spoke, as if each instruction mattered more than any border report. When he needed to check her pulse, he paused inches from her wrist. May I touch? She nodded. His thumb settled lightly over her artery, warmth steady, pressure perfect. He counted under his breath. Too fast, but not crashing. When she drank the bitter willow mixture, he held the cup but never forced it, never tilted without warning. When sweat soaked her collar, he offered the cloth and looked away while she wiped herself. Somewhere between one shiver and the next, words spilled out of her in fragmented fury. The Luna's symptoms were wrong, she said. Not purge signs, no cramping pattern, no herb smell on breath, no pupil constriction. She was tachycardic, trembling, uterine bleeding without expulsion rhythm. Moonbane can do that in concentrate. So can Wolf's Root adulterant, but not at that speed. I never made her tonic. I didn't. I believe you. She laughed weakly. You barely know me. I know scent, he said. You smell like pain and truth. She closed her eyes. Truth didn't help much at court. No. His voice roughened. But it will here. She turned her head on the pallet, studying him in firelight. He looked wrecked. Mud to his knees, blood crusted on one knuckle, exhaustion carving shadows under his eyes. Alpha by force, not luxury. He could have invoked bond, dominance, gratitude, debt. Instead, he was grinding bark on a stone floor at her direction. Why are you out there? She asked, glancing toward the door where his blanket still lay in the corridor. You could take the bed in the command wing. He rinsed the mortar, buying a beat. If I sleep inside, you might wake afraid and feel trapped. I have the key. Exactly. The medicine finally dragged the fever down toward bearable. Her limbs grew heavy. The bond hummed quieter, no less present. As she drifted, she felt the pallet shift with his weight. Just for a second. She opened her eyes to find him tucking the blanket edge near her shoulder without touching skin. Rest, he murmured. She caught his wrist before she could think better of it. He froze, gaze snapping to hers, gold flickering at the edge of his pupils. Theron, she said, tasting the name for the first time. Yes? Thank you. The words seemed to hit him harder than any blow. He bowed his head once, fierce and brief. Sleep, Seraphina. When she woke at dawn, the key was still by her hand, and Theron was still outside her door. By the following afternoon, the inner hall of the keep had become a supply council. Maps weighted with stones, ledgers open, sacks of dried grain stacked against a wall that still carried scorch marks from the old siege. Nightshade officers argued in clipped, hungry voices about bandage shortages, winter stores, and 3 pups down with lung rot in the lower barracks. Seraphina stood near the map table, wrapping fresh linen around her wrist burns. Fever had broken, but left her hollow. Theron had asked if she would advise on triage priorities. She'd said yes before mistrust could catch up. Rurik, scarred lieutenant, jabbed a finger at the ledger. If we divert Yarrow and Willow to the clinic, fighters go without field kits. We can't bleed stock for a miscarriage witch. The insult landed like a thrown stone in a room already strung tight. Seraphina stiffened, pulse kicking. Old reflex told her to make herself small, useful, quiet. Theron didn't even rise fully. His palm came down on the oak council table with a crack that split straight through the grain from edge to edge. Inkpots jumped. A map slid to the floor. Silence slammed into place. I warned you once, he said. Rurik set his jaw, but his scent betrayed him. Fear under stubbornness. I speak for survival. You speak accusation without proof. Theron's eyes burned wolf bright. In Nightshade territory, that is treason to pack cohesion. A younger lieutenant swallowed hard. Alpha, Theron cut him off. Hear me, all of you. Seraphina Windrider stands under my protection and under pack law as healer. Any wolf who calls for her harm, chain, or silencing answers me in blood challenge. No one accepted. Rurik looked at Seraphina then, as if seeing not a political burden, but a line he could die crossing. He looked away first. Understood. Theron nodded once. Good. Now sit down and stop wasting time. He turned to Seraphina, tone changing like a door opening. Where should supplies go first? She stared at him a beat too long, then forced herself back into work. Lower barracks lung rot gets time steam and honey bark now, or you'll have pneumonia by week's end. Field kits can substitute pine resin for 2 days if properly filtered. I can teach prep. Quills scratched as officers took notes. Nobody interrupted. Halfway through dosage calculations, a horn sounded at the outer gate. 3 clipped blasts. Not alarm. Formal arrival. A runner burst in, breathless. Moonborder inspectors, 2 clerks, 6 guard. They demand audit of treaty assets. Seraphina's stomach dropped so fast she gripped the table edge. Asset, chain, gag her, cut the tongue. Rurik cursed under his breath. Several officers looked to Theron. Theron looked to Seraphina first. Do you want to see them? No. Then you won't. He strode from the hall. The council surged after him. Seraphina moved too, before caution could stop her. They reached the gate court as moon inspectors in gray-blue cloaks dismounted, scroll cases under arm, expressions pinched with bureaucratic disdain. The lead clerk bowed shallowly. By authority of Provisional Peace Clause 9, we are here to verify status and condition of transferred medical property designated. Theron planted himself in the gate opening, broad as the threshold, wolf at his eyes full and lethal. Try that sentence again. The clerk blinked. Designated asset Seraphina Windrider. She is not inventory. Each word landed like a stone. She is under Nightshade protection. Treaty language is explicit, so is mine. The moon guards shifted, hands near sword hilts. Nightshade archers above drew in perfect unison, bowstrings whisper tight. The clerk licked dry lips. We require visual confirmation she remains alive and compliant. From behind Theron, Seraphina spoke before fear could close her throat. I am alive. I am not compliant. Every head turned. Theron didn't glance back, but she felt the edge of a smile in his scent. The clerk's face pinched. You will return to Mooncourt upon council summons. Theron stepped forward one pace. Dominance rolled off him in palpable waves, enough to make the nearest moon guard whine before he bit it back. Listen carefully, Theron said. Any summons built on accusation without scent proof will be treated as hostile action. You want cooperation? Bring evidence. Bring law. Do not bring chains. The clerk swallowed. I'll report your position. Do that. He held the gate until they backed their horses out into the snow, then signaled once. Iron doors slammed shut. Seraphina realized only then that her hands were steady. Theron turned to two sentries on the wall walk. Bram. Ilya. New post at the clinic door, rotating every 4 hours. No one enters without Healer Windrider's permission or mine. Both thumped fist to chest. Yes, Alpha. He faced the gathered pack, voice carrying across stone. From this hour, accusation without scent and evidence is treason in Nightshade. We do not repeat Mooncourt's cowardice here. A murmur ran through the wolves, not all pleased, but all listening. Seraphina met his gaze across the courtyard. The bond tugged, warm and relentless. This time she didn't fight the pull. She just stood in it, breathing. He had traded threats for laws in front of his own officers. He had given her a key. He had asked before touching. The fear in her chest was still there, scar deep and alert. But around it, something new unfolded, thin as first ice, fragile as dawn, and real. Trust, beginning. Trust, beginning. It barely had time to breathe before the next blade found it. A messenger hawk arrived before sunset, claws bloodied from hard flight. A Mooncourt tube lashed to its leg in black and silver cord. The bird snapped at everyone until Seraphina took it herself, murmuring nonsense under her breath, the way she did with frightened patience. It stilled long enough for her to free the tube. Theron read the first parchment in the command hall with half his officers watching. By the third line, his scent went from controlled to murder. Out, he said. No one argued. Boots scraped stone, the door shut. Only Theron and Seraphina remained, the fire throwing jagged gold over split tables and maps. He handed her the page. At the top sat the Silvermane crest. Beneath it, in elegant court script, was a statement witnessed by councillor votes, alleging that Seraphina Windrider had confessed in private to correcting bloodline weakness in noble pregnancies through selective tincture intervention, a confession to deliberate poisoning wrapped in pretty language. Her stomach turned. I never said any of this. I know. There was a second sheet, an excerpt from treaty clauses, old and worm-eaten with legal phrasing. Clause 14, subsection C. In event transferred criminal asset is deemed threat to noble bloodline continuity, remand to originating court may be demanded by majority council call. Seraphina felt ice under her ribs. Hidden clause. Buried clause, Theron corrected, jaw hard. Hollow Pass was signed under siege pressure. They counted on us not having scribes to parse their traps. There was a third letter, sealed with dark red wax. Not official. Personal. Theron cracked it without asking permission from whoever sent it. His shoulders went rigid as he read. "Theron?" she asked. He set the page down so she could see. This one was in Valentina's own hand, flourished and precise. "Alpha Nightshade, you are practical, whatever else your reputation claims. Reject the unstable bond publicly, remit the healer for lawful review, and I will secure you what your fractured pack cannot win alone: council recognition, grain roots, armory credit, and my hand in political union. Refuse, and clause enforcement proceeds. The court prefers cooperation to correction." Lady Valentina Silvermane Serafina stared at the signature until the letters blurred. Rosewater and clove came back to her memory like nausea. "She doesn't want justice," Serafina said quietly. "She wants me silenced and herself crowned by whichever alpha wears the most territory." Theron's laugh was brief and vicious. "Then she chose the wrong wolf. She chose a dangerous field." Serafina set the papers down carefully, as if touching rot. "She has council votes, Silvermane money, scribes willing to dress lies as law. She doesn't need truth if she can manufacture procedure." Theron braced his hands on the table and leaned toward her. "Look at me." She did. "I don't care what wax she stamps. I am not sending you back." The bond flared at the promise, hot and hungry. Her fear flared with it. Then she pushes harder. She won't stop at parchment. "Neither will I." A knock came, two quick, one long. Rurik entered at Theron's curt speak. "Scouts from East Ridge," he said. "Moon riders setting temporary posts inside neutral scrub. Too close for coincidence." Theron nodded once. "Double night watch. No one travels alone." Rurik hesitated, eyes flicking to Serafina, then held steady. "Understood, Alpha." When he left, Serafina looked back at Valentina's letters. There were no spelling errors, no legal cracks, no frantic desperation, only patience. That was what made Valentina Silvermane lethal. She didn't need to lunge when she could tighten every corridor until breathing itself became permission she controlled. Pressure came from all directions at once. By morning, copies of the forged confession were circulating through border camps, folded into supply crates, tucked beneath ale casks, accidentally read aloud by traders. The phrase "selective tincture intervention" spread like mold. Wolves who'd started nodding respectfully to Serafina in clinic now watched her with old uncertainty in their eyes. She answered it the only way she could: work. She stitched a torn flank while a young fighter bit leather and cursed. She lanced a boil on a blacksmith's shoulder. She sat with the 3 coughing pups in the lower barracks for 2 hours of time steam until their breathing eased. She corrected dosages in the ledger with precise notes any trained healer could verify. Evidence. Always evidence. Theron did not hover, but he was everywhere. In doorways, at corridor turns, outside the clinic when supply arguments rose. Twice she caught him intercepting whispered conversations before they reached her. Once she found him in the herb room reading her labels with fierce concentration, lips moving around botanical names as if memorizing a battle map. "Moonwort," he muttered, tapping one jar. "Too much and you bleed out," she said from the doorway. He looked over, unashamed at being caught. "Good to know before someone tries to poison us with our own shelf." At noon, a caravan limped in with half its grain missing and 2 drivers bruised purple. "Moon inspectors," one said through split teeth, "said route taxes updated by council authority. Took medicine crates too." Theron's control thinned visibly. Under whose seal? Silvermane. By evening, a formal summons arrived. Neutral summit at Grey Fen Stones, witnessed by 3 lesser pack alphas, to adjudicate Clause 14 and Nightshade compliance. Attendance mandatory under treaty peace terms. Rurik read the line aloud and spat on the floor. Serafina folded the parchment. If we don't go, they call us in breach. If we do, Theron said, they'll try to put chain on you in front of witnesses and call it lawful. She met his gaze. Then we don't let them frame the scene. You're not bait. No, she said, voice steady. I'm the evidence they forged around. If I hide, she controls the narrative uncontested. His wolf flashed, gold and furious. My instinct says lock every gate and keep you out of their reach. My instinct says run every time someone holds paper and says it's law. She took a breath that tasted like rust and cedar. Instinct kept me alive. It didn't clear my name. Silence stretched between them, taut as drawn sinew. Finally, he asked, if we attend, what do you need? Not you can't. Not I forbid it. Need. 2 sentries I trust at my back, she said. No silver within reach. And if they try to isolate me, you break protocol. He nodded immediately. Done. There was one more pressure neither of them named outright. The bond itself, growing louder with each day they fought side by side. When he was in another wing, she felt the absence like an ache in a healing fracture. When he stepped close, heat traveled her spine in a shiver she pretended was cold. At night, she still slept with the key nearby, but now she woke to his breathing outside her door and felt steadier, not trapped. That scared her almost as much as Valentina's letters. Dependence had teeth. She knew that. She wore its scars. Yet when he spoke her name in a crowded hall and every muscle in her body unclenched on reflex, she had to admit the truth she kept dodging. This wasn't only bond compulsion anymore. It was him. Night fell sharp and wind-bitten before the summit. The keep quieted in layers, kitchen clatter fading, patrol calls thinning, braziers hissing in snow. Serafina found Theron on the upper rampart beneath the shattered moon arch, where broken stone framed a strip of hard stars. He stood with his hands on the parapet, coat open, steam rising from his shoulders. She approached softly. You're bleeding. He glanced down, a slice along his palm, fresh and narrow. Crate nail. Sit. He obeyed without argument, which still startled her every time. She unpacked her field roll on the parapet between them. Clean thread, salve, needle. Her fingers moved automatically. His watched with intent focus. May I? She asked, lifting his hand. A faint smile touched his mouth. Yes. Healer. His skin was rough, warm, calloused across the base of each finger. She cleaned the wound. He didn't flinch, only tracked her face as if she were the thing worth monitoring. After a minute, he said, I never thanked you. For stitching your hand? For staying. Needle paused midair. You left me a key. I left you an escape route, he said. Not a reason. She tied the stitch knot and set his hand down gently. You've given me several reasons. Wind carried pine smoke between them. Somewhere below, a wolf laughed, then the sound disappeared. Serafina stared at the stones. When they arrested me, they kept asking for names. Who had access to lunar herbs? Who could be turned? Who I'd accuse to save myself? Her voice stayed level by force. When I refused, one guard held a silver knife to my tongue and told me healers are useful mute. Theron went utterly still, not the stillness of calm, of a predator hearing prey breathe. They didn't cut, she said quickly. Valentina wanted spectacle at trial, but I still wake tasting metal. His hand flexed once, knuckles whitening. If I had found you one day earlier, you didn't. She met his eyes. You found me when you did. He swallowed whatever fury rose and asked very quietly, what do you want me to do when fear hits you like that? The question undid something in her chest. Ask before touching, she whispered. Keep asking, even if you think you know the answer. I will. She hesitated, then reached into her pocket and pulled out the iron key he'd given her that first night. She set it in his palm and closed his fingers over it. "I don't need this to believe you anymore," she said. His breath caught. "Serafina—" She leaned forward and rested her forehead lightly against his. No claim, no bite, just warmth shared in the cold. He made a broken sound, half laugh, half ache, and held perfectly still, as if one wrong move would shatter the moment. "I'm still scared," she admitted. "So am I," he said. "Of failing you. Of choosing wrong in a room designed to make monsters out of law." "Then choose with me, not for me." His eyes closed. Always. When she drew back, his gaze dropped once to her mouth and returned to her eyes, asking without words. She wasn't ready for that fire. Not tonight. Not with Grey Fen waiting at dawn. But she lifted his stitched hand and pressed it once to her throat, where pulse hammered. "Trust me trying." He exhaled like a vow. Grey Fen stones jutted from marsh ice like black teeth, ringed by truce-mark totems wrapped in white cloth. Neutral ground, by treaty definition. Dangerous ground, by reality. Delegations arrived in layered waves, Nightshade in dark leathers and mismatched steel, Mooncourt in formal gray, lesser pack alphas with their own banners and their own appetites for advantage. Scribes sat on portable stools, ink freezing at the edges. Serafina walked at Theron's left with Bram and Ilya 2 steps behind. No chains, no hood. Her healer satchel hung at her hip like a reminder of identity no parchment could erase. Then Valentina Silvermane stepped from her carriage. She wore winter white trimmed in fox fur, throat bare, smile composed as prayer. The same serene satisfaction from the gallery in Mooncourt, only sharper now, because this stage was bigger. "Alpha Theron," she called, voice carrying easily. "How good of you to honor treaty process." "Lady Silvermane," Theron said flatly. Her gaze slid to Serafina. And Serafina Windrider. Remarkable resilience. Serafina gave her nothing. Proceedings opened with ritual nonsense, witness rolls, clause citations, recitation of truce penalties. Then Silvermane's appointed advocate presented the forged confession with dramatic care, gasps from lesser alphas, calculated murmurs. Theron's rebuttal was blunt. Forgery, no scent corroboration, no healer inquest. Valentina lifted one elegant shoulder. "Then let the accused submit to Mooncourt custody for formal review, as Clause 14 permits." Serafina stepped forward before Theron could answer. "Review requires independent evidence. Produce the original tonic vial, chain of custody logs, and my apprentice's records." Valentina smiled as if indulging a child. "How procedural of you." One lesser alpha, gray-muzzled, opportunistic, cleared his throat. "There is also larger governance to consider. With King Roderick withdrawn from public command and throne authority in dispute, border instability threatens all pacts." A ripple went through the circle. There it was, the second game board. Valentina turned to Theron with practiced regret. "Which is why I made you a private offer. Reject this chaotic bond, stand with Moon governance through political union, and we stabilize roots within a fortnight. Grain, weapons, recognition. You know your wolves are starving." Theron didn't even look tempted. "I would rather starve honest." Her smile thinned. Romantic, unsustainable. She flicked 2 fingers. Everything happened at once. Silvermane guards in neutral livery stepped from behind a scribe screen. Too many, too close. One hurled a powdered pouch at Bram's face. He choked, eyes streaming. Ilya lunged and got a truce iron baton across the ribs. White cloth totems flared with ward scent. Someone had primed the ring to trigger paralysis gas if wolves shifted. Serafina reached for her satchel and a gloved hand clamped over her mouth from behind, rag bitter with suppressor herbs. She drove her elbow backward, connected with a sternum, almost broke free. Then silver snapped around her wrists so fast she heard the lock click before pain arrived. "Theron!" she shouted as they dragged her sideways. He roared and surged forward, stopped only by 4 truce pikes crossing his chest and 3 neutral alphas barking breach warnings. His eyes were molten gold, teeth bared, every line of him poised to turn the summit into slaughter. Valentina stood just outside claw reach, perfectly calm amid chaos. "Do not," she said sweetly, "violate truce in front of witnesses, Alpha. You wanted law." Serafina fought hard enough to tear skin under the cuffs. "Coward." Valentina's gaze never left Theron. "You may recover her," she said, voice ringing across the stones, "by lawful exchange. Surrender your claim to the vacant Alpha King throne in writing before council. Abdicate ambition, and the healer is returned." The marsh went silent. Theron's chest heaved once, twice, as Serafina was hauled toward Silvermane carriages through truce smoke and shouting wolves. Their eyes locked across the widening distance, bond stretched to a wire that felt ready to snap skin and soul alike. Then a carriage door slammed between them. The carriage lurched once, then stopped. Serafina slammed shoulder first into the wood wall, silver cuffs biting to bone. Suppressant herbs burned her throat from the rag they'd held over her mouth, making each breath scrape. Outside, wolves shouted over one another. Nightshade rage, moon court orders, neutral alphas barking truce protocol like words could leash blood. The door opened. Valentina stood framed in gray daylight, white fur collar untouched by mud, gloves immaculate. "Bring her," she said. 2 guards dragged Serafina out into a ring of standing stones behind the main summit circle, hidden from most witnesses by scribe screens and totem poles. The marsh stank of cold peat and truce smoke. Valentina dismissed everyone with a flick of her fingers except one clerk holding a portable writing desk. "Look at you," she said softly when they were alone enough, still bleeding, still defiant. "You could have disappeared quietly. It would have been kinder." Serafina spat blood at her boots. Valentina glanced down, almost amused. "No court manners left. How provincial." "You forged my confession. I authored your inevitability." Valentina stepped closer, rosewater and clove cutting through marsh stink. "You were always useful, Serafina. Clever hands, no pedigree worth protecting. Wolves like you are pieces, not players." Serafina tested the cuffs. Silver fire shot up both arms. "Then why are you still talking to me, if I'm only a piece?" Valentina's smile thinned. "Because he won't stop trying to reach you. Because I need him to choose where everyone can see it." As if summoned by the words, a roar rolled across the stones. Theron, raw enough to raise every hair on Serafina's neck. She twisted toward the main circle. Through gaps in the screens, she saw him straining against crossed pikes and 3 neutral alphas, Bram half-blind and snarling beside him. Ilya bent over from a cracked rib. Valentina angled herself so Serafina had to look at her again. "Your border wolf has a problem. The throne of Haifang remains vacant with Roderick in retreat and council split. Half the packs would rally to Theron if he pressed his claim. So I've offered him mercy. Surrender his claim publicly, and you live. Refuse, and Clause 14 remands you to Moon custody immediately." "You mean your custody?" Valentina's eyes gleamed. Semantics. A horn blast silenced the summit. The gray-muzzled lesser alpha who'd spoken earlier climbed the central platform and called for emergency adjudication under truce witness law. Scribes scrambled. Ink froze on quills. Valentina nodded to her clerk. "Read terms." The clerk's voice shook only once. "By authority of witness packs, healer Serafina Windrider shall be released from current seizure upon written, witnessed abdication of Theron Nightshade from present and future claim to Alpha King throne, effective immediately. Failure to execute permits remand transfer under Clause 14. Seraphina went cold under the fever heat. No, not like this. Not because of her. She shoved against the guards hard enough to stumble one backward. Theron! Don't you dare! He snapped toward her voice. Their eyes locked across spears and smoke, bond pulling like a blade through skin. Valentina leaned to Seraphina's ear. Watch. He'll choose power in the end. They always do. But when they hauled Seraphina to the edge of the witness platform and forced her to her knees where everyone could see the cuffs, Theron stopped fighting the pikes. He went still, breathing hard, face cut by wind and fury. Then he stepped forward. Bring the document, he said. A collective intake of breath moved through the gathered packs. Even the marsh seemed to pause. A scribe ran up with parchment and seal block. Theron took the quill, looked once at Seraphina, and Seraphina shook her head violently. Don't, she said, voice cracking. I won't be the price. His answer carried only to her, rough and absolute. You are not a price. You are the choice. He signed. The wax seal hit parchment with a hard, final press. Witness alphas announced the abdication to the circle. Shock rippled outward, then uproar. Some wolves shouting triumph, others disbelief. Rurik swearing loud enough to make a clerk flinch. Valentina actually blinked, composure slipping for one stunned heartbeat. She had expected bargaining, delay, resistance, not surrender. She recovered quickly, chin lifting. Release the healer, she ordered, clipped. The guard unlocked one cuff. Seraphina did not stand. She did not run to Theron. She planted both knees in frozen mud and lifted her voice into the chaos. I invoke healer's right. Silence fell in confused layers. One neutral alpha frowned. That right is archaic. It is law older than your treaties, Seraphina snapped. When a healer is accused of bloodline murder, she may demand public blood-scent inquest before execution, remand, or exile. Denial void sentence. The gray-muzzled alpha looked to the others. Two nodded reluctantly. They knew the clause. Everyone had hoped no one would use it. Valentina's smile returned, brittle now. A theatrical delay. A lethal one, Seraphina said. For me, if I lie. She held out her still shackled wrists toward the witness fire. Remove silver. I perform under oath, or not at all. Theron moved before anyone else, snapping the second cuff himself. He didn't touch skin, didn't speak. But his hands shook. Seraphina rose on unsteady legs and turned to the full circle of wolves. I stake my life on this inquest. If evidence points to my hand, I accept death sentence by healer's blade. Murmurs exploded. Valentina's scent sharpened, first real edge of alarm. Granted, said the gray alpha at last. Perform then. Seraphina exhaled once and reached for her satchel. A Silvermane guard tried to block her. Theron's growl dropped him back a full pace without touch. From the satchel's inner seam, Seraphina drew a tiny glass ampule no longer than her thumb, sealed with beeswax darkened by old blood. Valentina's eyes flicked to it, then away too fast. Seraphina held it up so all could see. From the Luna's chamber. Spilled tincture scraped from the goblet rim before my arrest. Preserved for analysis. I suspected adulteration before I was taken. Theron's head turned sharply toward her, surprise and savage hope colliding in his scent. She knelt at the witness stone, set out a shallow silver bowl, and opened a pouch of dried vervain and ash root. Her hands were steady now. This is memory lacing, she said to the circle. Scent and blood recall bound to witness flame. If I falsify, the poison rebound can stop my heart. Rurik swore under his breath. Bram whispered, Saints. Seraphina sliced her palm with a healer's lancet and let blood drip into the bowl. She cracked the ampule. Bitter, sweet, wrong scent hit the air. Herbs corrupted by something metallic and moon-cold. She added 3 drops to her blood. The mixture hissed. Then she inhaled the rising vapor deep. Pain knifed behind her eyes. The marsh blurred, then sharpened into layered scent memory. Luna's chamber, panic sweat, linen, iron blood, shattered cup, and beneath her own willow draft, a concentrated thread of moonbane so potent it stung like frostbite at the back of the throat. Seraphina swayed, fighting nausea. "There!" she gasped, voice carrying strangely as ritual took hold. Moonbane concentrate, not trace contamination, deliberate dose. She forced herself to continue, feeding words into the memory stream. Concentrate this pure is restricted to noble apothecaries under council lock. Healers can't requisition it without triple sigil. My records show no request. One witness Alpha lifted his muzzle, scenting the vapor plume, his lips peeled back in a snarl. I smell it. Another did the same. Moonbane. Valentina laughed, too bright. Convenient vapor tricks. She could have spiked her own sample. Seraphina wiped blood from her mouth and stood, shaking. Then submit to scent reading. Valentina stilled. Seraphina stepped toward her, bowl in one hand, the uncapped ampule in the other. If you had no hand in this, breathe it before witnesses, and let your scent hold clean. The circle tightened. Wolves leaned in. Do it, said the gray Alpha. Valentina's composure cracked at the edges. I will not be commanded by a stripped healer. Then be condemned by your refusal, Theron said, voice like stone. Cornered, Valentina snatched control the only way left. She reached up, yanked the silver hairpin from her braid, and lunged for Seraphina's throat with a scream stripped of elegance. Theron hit her mid-strike. They crashed to the stone, Valentina's wrist twisted in his grip, hairpin skittering across ice. She clawed for his eyes. He pinned her forearm to the witness slab hard enough to bruise bone. Hold her, he snarled. Seraphina didn't freeze. She moved. From her satchel, she ripped a spool of healer's iron thread, used for violent fever patients, and looped it around Valentina's wrists in swift surgical turns, knotting with practiced precision that cut circulation without breaking skin. Valentina bucked and hissed, but Seraphina cinched the final bind and pulled it tight until the noble gasped. Then Seraphina picked up the fallen moonbane ampule, uncapped it, and pressed it beneath Valentina's nose. Valentina flinched. Just a fraction. But in a wolf circle, a fraction was thunder. Guilt scent detonated across the stones, hot copper panic, acrid deceit, adrenaline spike of prey caught in trap. 3 alphas snarled in the same instant. There, one barked. She knows it. Valentina's chest heaved. He should have chosen power. She spat at Seraphina, mascara streaking in melting snow. Not you. Seraphina crouched to her eye level, blood still dripping from her palm. He chose truth. That's why you lost. Witness judgment came fast once scent spoke. Valentina Silvermane, declared the gray-muzzled Alpha, voice ringing, by blood scent and assault in tribunal, you are stripped of noble title, council seat, and territorial claim. Another Alpha added, sentence, exile beyond the frost line, no pack shelter under pain of sanction. Valentina screamed denial until 2 neutral enforcers hauled her up in chains. She twisted once more toward Theron, feral now, all polish burned away. This kingdom was mine. Theron didn't blink. You never understood kingdom. They dragged her through the marsh while wolves watched in hard silence, white breath rising around iron links. When she vanished into the snow haze, the circle finally exhaled. Seraphina's legs gave out. Theron caught her this time without asking, because she was already falling and she leaned into him willingly, forehead to his shoulder, both of them shaking. Around them, treaty clerks tore up Clause 14 copies under witness order. Scribes drafted void declarations over split ink. Rurik whooped once, wild with relief. Bram laughed through swollen eyes. Ilya wiped blood from his mouth and saluted Seraphina with 2 fingers. The gray alpha lifted his staff. By inquest result, charges against Seraphina Windrider are null. Remand claim void. Treaty corruption under Silvermane seal suspended pending full review. Theron held Seraphina tighter, voice at her ear, broken with restrained fury and awe. You terrifying, brilliant wolf. She laughed weakly against his coat. You signed away a throne. I'd do worse. Don't, she whispered. Not alone again. His answer was immediate. Never alone. Night fell clear and knife cold over Nightshade Keep. After healers flushed the ritual poison from Seraphina's system and bandaged her palm, after Bram and Ilya took watch and Rurik personally checked every gatebolt twice, Seraphina climbed the upper rampart beneath the shattered moon arch. Theron waited there, coat off despite the cold, moonlight cutting silver lines through his dark hair. No guards, no witnesses, just broken stone, winter stars, and the hum of a bond that had survived chain, law, and blood. He turned as she approached, and for once words failed him first. Seraphina stopped an arm's length away. Her pulse beat in her throat like a second heart. Theron swallowed. If you need more time, I'm here. He nodded once, still wary as if she might bolt, and he would let her if she asked. Today changed everything. The throne, the treaties, your name. His voice roughened. So I'm asking with nothing held over you. No debt. No law. No fate argument. He dropped to one knee on the frozen stone. Seraphina's breath caught. Seraphina Windrider, he said, looking up at her with fierce, trembling steadiness. Do you still want this bond? Me, as mate. If your answer is no, I will protect you anyway and never touch you without permission. The world narrowed to him, to cedar and winter rain and the open honesty in his scent, hope braided with terror. She stepped closer, reached down, and put her fingers under his jaw. Yes, she whispered. I choose you. His eyes flashed molten gold. Seraphina drew her hair over one shoulder and bared the curve where neck met shoulder, skin goose-prickled in the wind. She held his gaze and gave the consent he had earned 100 times over. Mark me, Theron. A sound tore out of him, half reverence, half hunger. He rose slowly, giving her one last chance to pull away. She didn't. His hands bracketed her waist, firm and shaking. His mouth pressed first to her throat, open, warm, worshipful. Then teeth found the junction beneath her ear. The bite was deep. Pain flared white-hot, sharp enough to arch her spine and drag a cry from her chest. For a heartbeat, it was only hurt, only pressure and blood and the wild instinct to fight. Then the bond ignited. Heat flooded from the wound in a golden surge, racing through her nerves, down her spine, into her fingertips. Pain transformed mid-breath into pulsing, electric pleasure so intense her knees buckled. Theron caught her, still latched, growling low as if anchoring himself to her heartbeat. Images and feelings slammed through the bond in both directions. His first sight of her in chains, his rage, his restraint outside her door, her fear in the wagon, her stubborn pride in the tribunal, his awe as she stood in blood and law and refused to break. It all braided into one bright, relentless current. He released the bite with a shuddering exhale, tongue soothing the mark, forehead falling to hers. Mine, he rasped, voice wrecked. Seraphina's wolf surged up joyous and fierce. She cupped his face, turned him, and pressed him back against the moonarch stone. My turn, she said, breathless. His pupils blew wide. Yes. Gods, yes. She gripped his shoulder, found the muscle where neck met collar and bit. His body jolted like struck lightning. He made a raw, stunned sound and then a full wolf roar that rolled out over the keep and brought answering howls from below. Blood, salt, cedar, heat. She held until the bond answered again, sealing in the opposite direction, threading her claim through him as surely as his through her. When she released, she licked the wound closed the way he had hers, his hands fisted in her coat, trembling hard. "Yours," he said, panting, pressing kisses to her brow, her cheek, the fresh mark at her throat. "Yours, mate." "Mine," she echoed, laughing and crying at once. The sealing pulse hit fully then, an inward snap and outward bloom that dropped them both to their knees on the frozen stones. Lightless moon above, shattered arch around them, they clung to each other and shook with it. Every nerve alive, the frantic ache of uncompleted bond finally settling into deep, steady warmth. No chains, no witnesses, no throne between breaths. Forehead to forehead they whispered together, voices ragged and certain. No throne above us, no chain between us. They stayed there a long time, wrapped in each other and the new, quiet thrum of mated certainty. 3 days later, the Great Council reconvened at Haifang Hall under armed truce and very little dignity. Seraphina stood at a long table strewn with parchment, ink, and herb-stained notes, while alphas argued themselves hoarse. Theron stood at her right, marked shoulder visible above his collar on purpose. Her own mark bloomed dark at her throat, impossible to ignore. Gray-muzzled witness Alpha thumped his staff. "Order!" Seraphina didn't wait for permission. "You all signed or tolerated a treaty that let healers be traded like livestock and condemned by rumor. That ends now." She slid a document down the table. Title line in bold script. Border Healers Charter. Clause 1, she said, tapping. "No wolf may be convicted of medical harm without independent scent analysis, chain of custody evidence, and cross-pack healer review." Murmurs. She kept going. Clause 2. Transferred medical workers retain personhood rights, cannot be shackled in silver except active violence risk verified by 2 witnesses. Rurik, standing in Nightshade's delegation now in formal coat, gave a savage grin at that. Clause 3. Any accusation against a healer proven forged becomes treason-grade offense with automatic title review. A moon counselor paled. At the rear of the hall, Luna Isolde, still wan but upright, rose to speak. Every head turned. "I drank from the goblet in my chamber," she said quietly. "I did not see who prepared it. I affirm Healer Windrider warned of adulteration before she was removed." Her gaze found Seraphina. "I was told she refused treatment. That was a lie." King Roderick sat 2 seats away, circlet absent, shoulders bowed. He did not defend himself. When called, he stood and said only, "I signed convenience over truth. My abdication remains." No one argued. Votes were called by pack and sealed with scent. The charter passed by overwhelming majority. Then came throne business. A counselor cleared his throat. With Roderick withdrawn and Silvermane stripped, prior abdication from claimant Theron Nightshade may be reconsidered by unanimous consent due to coercion. Theron's jaw tightened. "I don't reclaim anything unless terms are explicit." "State them," said the Grey Alpha. Theron turned, not to the council first, but to Seraphina. "With your agreement." She held his gaze. "State them." He faced the hall. "I accept restored claim only if Seraphina Windrider is invested beside me as co-ruler in law and command, and as High Healer with veto authority on medical, civilian, and prisoner treatment statutes." Outrage sputtered from 2 old nobles. "Unprecedented?" "Necessary," Luna Isolde cut in, steel finely in her voice. "Or we learned nothing." Silence. Then one by one, alphas gave assent. The investiture was immediate, stripped of old pageantry and all the truer for it. No jeweled circlets, just oathstone and blood. Seraphina and Theron cut palms, pressed hands together over the Haifang sigil, and spoke their vows to pack, border and each other, while wolves watched with wary hope and, in some faces, tears. Outside, snow began to fall. Soft, relentless, clean. By spring thaw, Nightshade Keep no longer smelled only of forge smoke and old war. It smelled of bread, pine resin, pups, wet earth, and tinctures drying on clinic rafters. Serafina stood in the new infirmary doorway, while two apprentices sorted labeled jars under her supervision. One of them looked up and grinned. Tamsin, smuggled out of Mooncourt archives by Luna Isolde's own carriage, and now gloriously overworked. "You alphabetized Wolfsbane beside Willow again," Serafina said. Tamsin groaned. "I hate letters." "Good. You'll remember this mistake forever." Outside the clinic windows, training shouts rose from the yard where Rurik drilled young fighters, pausing every fourth sequence to bark hydration orders, because Serafina had threatened to dose him with laxative tea if he didn't. Bram, eye fully healed, taught sentry rotation to a cluster of adolescents. Ilya supervised construction on a second barracks wing that included, by royal decree, an isolation ward and birthing rooms. Theron stepped into the clinic with a basket of early nettles over one arm and mud to his knees. King in title, still impossible to keep out of manual labor. "Your Majesty," Serafina said with exaggerated formality. He snorted. "Don't start." Tamsin and the apprentices immediately found urgent reasons to be elsewhere. When they were alone, Theron set the basket down and came to her, thumb tracing the faded edge of her mate mark. The bond between them hummed steady, warm as banked fire. "Council riders arrived?" he said. "Valentina crossed the frost line at dawn under guard. No pack took her in." Serafina exhaled, a knot loosening she hadn't admitted still existed. "Good. Roderick requests permission to fund border clinics in restitution. No title, no vote." She considered, then nodded once. "He can fund. He does not supervise." "Agreed." He leaned in, forehead touching hers in the habit that had become home. "Rounds after supper?" "Only if you finish your own broth and stop giving yours to the patrol pups." He looked offended. "Betrayal?" She kissed him anyway, quick, smiling, certain. From the yard came a chorus of little voices reciting the new training creed Rurik hated, and Serafina insisted on. Claw for defense, hand for healing, truth before rank. Theron listened, then grinned against her mouth. "You've remade my wolves." She shook her head. "Our wolves." At dusk they walked the ramparts together beneath the repaired moon arch, marks visible, hands linked without ceremony. Below them, lanterns lit clinic and training ground in equal measure. Refugee families moved through the courtyard without flinching at uniforms. No one whispered baby killer when Serafina passed. A sentry called the evening all clear. Theron squeezed her hand, voice low and fierce with quiet joy. "Mine." She leaned into him, smiling toward the lights they had fought for. "Yours, mate." And this time, no one could trade either of them away.